Think we're live.
We're up. Hey, hey.
Hey, hey.
It's always awesome. How are you today, Hayley? On another full disclosure Thursday.
Time flies. I feel like we were just here.
Yeah. Well, doesn't it feel like in this world of COVID that every week is like a month?
But also like a day.
A day. Yeah. It's everything's changing so much all the time. I don't know. It's not like that we've loads of time because we have less time. There's not, I feel like the days have shortened and I have less time, even though we're not commuting as much and there's more time available.
But there is, without the commute, it's that there's more individual showings. So, right. So it feels like every showing is like a whole production of an hour. Also the coordination of like a tour is a whole part of the job now, instead of just utilizing brokers tour and open houses like we used to. So
you really
just changed a bit.
Yeah, you really see the efficiencies that the brokers tours and the open houses kind of brought into the process.
And like the fact that people are looking in broader areas for the most part. So like where I'm in multiple counties kind of every week, which is actually really cool because every town has its own nuances and they're super fun to learn about.
That's great. So while we're waiting for Sean to come join us, what are our latest setup? We've been running on this cadence where single families, there's about 50 selling on a weekly basis and about 50 something coming in.
So
where are we this week?
74 single families came on the market this week. 69 of them went into contract and 46 of them closed. So a little more.
A little bit more. So inventory may be creeping up a little bit. We're not kind of what's coming in is going out scenario as we were for the last few weeks. So that's good. Then what about the condo market, ever turbulent?
Yeah, so before I get there, I just wanted to point out, because we did this last week, I think about 12 of these single families that came on are under $1 million, but 2 of which are almost at $1 million. So
like 995.
Yeah, so our this is actually kind of cool. We have a little teeny. No, that's got to be an error. It's either a studio that's 2,100 square feet. or I'll check that one out. I think there might be a little bit of
data entry problem. Why? What are you looking at? What tweaked your interest? Do you want to share your screen and show us what you're looking at?
Oh, you know what? It's a lot. So it's
a lot.
Yeah, I can share my screen here, if you allow me to.
Yeah, you have full permission.
Excellent.
Full disclosure, you have full permission.
So I'm looking at this thing on Bradford, just down the street from our listing, a couple blocks. Why buy an ugly house and tear it down is the tagline. So it's a lot here with some renderings.
Okay. So, wow, pricey number for a lot.
Yeah. So
cool.
And back to the condos, we had 179 go active this week.
And we've been consistent, like every week, 160,
130.
Plus,
this is actually, I think, higher than we've had
in a while.
So, yeah. And I'm not surprised because like post Labor Day. But
and then it seems like right after Labor Day, that week where there would have been more properties, we had a couple of listings where photography and inspections and different things got cancelled because of the Armageddon or the Twilight Zone scenario that we had with the fires and that whole setup last week. So that, I think there's more inventory popping on this week because of that.
Well, so 179 came on, and that's including TICs. 85 went into contract and 62 closed.
We're getting a bump up. I had an interesting conversation yesterday on some data for the condos where the first quarter, where we're at now in the third quarter, completing the third quarter, is we're off by 14, and this is just looking at the worst hit area, Soma. That data is off by pricing is off by 14% on average.
Wow.
And but the amount of transactions between Q3 and Q2 has doubled. So I think we've kind of hit this kind of drop, and now we're kind of plateauing. The volume is starting to move up. So that and you can see it because we were going from transactions of 30 to 40 closing per week to have 60 closing this last week. And how many in contract? 80?
85.
85. So that's a big uptick in volume.
For sure. And also for multi-units, this week we had 18 2 to 4 units come on, and 8 of them closed, and 5 of them closed, 8 went into contract, 18 new. So more multi-units generally coming on.
Yeah.
We love.
Wow. Yeah.
Multi-units.
Totally.
The more the merrier.
So what else? We've noticed another little phenomenon that's kind of come into the marketplace, and that's co-ownership in the sense the group plan. Yes.
So basically, it's been interesting. It started with a couple months ago. We started working with 2 couples who would like to buy together, two families. They want to buy a duplex in the East Bay, so we're working on that. And then we also had, I now have a group of 6 individuals, a couple couples that want to buy a second home together in Sonoma County. And then I was talking to an agent up there, and she has, it's happening a lot with these kind of second home purchases that people are thinking about now, with more space, buying them collectively with friends or family. And so obviously there are a couple of things to consider with that. One is, how do you literally, how does title work? And then also, how does the financing work? And something that I didn't initially think about right away, Eddie, when we were talking, was it was like the first thing you brought up was, what is the exit plan for when somebody wants to get out? And so, hey, Sean. And Sean is actually working with us with the first one I mentioned, the 2 couples, so we can talk about how we're able to help structure the situations. So
well, and that really is just the one scenario is the exit plan. Because, a lot of people get involved. Many people, this is the truest form of TIC ownership, and many tenants in common. That's the legal. That's how you would hold title. It's tenants in common, and this is really what TIC kind of ownership status was kind of set up for. But you really need to talk about, like, everybody's all excited and it's all hunky-dory at the beginning, but you need that's the time that you have to establish the exit plan.
It's like a
Because
prenup.
yeah, it's kind of like a prenup. So I wouldn't know anything about anything like that. But
it's good preparation, right?
yeah,
Because you don't want to wind up in a position 5 years from now where, somebody just gets transferred to New York for a job and they're like, I don't need this Marin house anymore. Like, I'm not going to use it. So how do we handle that? Both from a finance standpoint and from a legal standpoint.
Yeah. And the TIC law firms that have kind of put together the TIC agreement that we use in regular kind of TIC properties are actually very experienced in this end of it too. It's not spoken about as much, although there are companies. You got a pitch the other day. It was a thing that was kind of on the rise for a while, and then it kind of tapered off when the world of financing kind of got a little more challenging. But there's this concept of why buy a vacation home that on average an American with a second home only uses it for 14 days a year. So there's this concept of why pay all this money for that second home if you're only going to use it for 14 days a year on average, which I'm sure shelter in place is changing that statistic pretty rapidly. But why not buy a portion of it where you buy your actual the 2 weeks that you're going to use every year, and then you have 6 weeks that float somewhere else.
And you own like 1/8 of it. I think the what really interests me about that model is from a seller standpoint, the person who owns that piece of real estate, like say it's a $10 million mansion, they may feel like, well, actually I have this, but I want to sell 50% of my ownership. It doesn't have to be equal shares. So, which is the beauty of tenancy in common, right? So I think it's interesting from that standpoint. If you like already have this house and you're like, well, how do I, instead of maybe like VRBOing it, right? What's a more like a permanent way to
do it? Although I think in that model, there's, if it's a $10 million house, do you really want to be the 50% partner with a bunch of other people? I can see the advantage. Like ultimately, the bigger advantage for a seller is that you make more selling by the ounce. You buy by the pound, sell by the ounce. So a seller can actually, maybe make more on it. But we digress into a more complicated area of the TIC world. The simple area is 2 or 3 families. They're all good friends, and they're like, let's buy a second home together. And you got to talk about what the exit plan is. And the one thing that came up a lot with TICs, and everybody kind of has to understand, especially in, Sean, you'll get to talk about this environment that we're in with super low interest rates. If somebody is selling their interest, nobody else, the way the agreements are normally written, the other remaining parties are not to have any financial impact from the sale of that unit. So if you are refining and the rate is higher, and that's going to increase the payment, the agreement is set up where that's not to happen to the remaining people. So the person selling is going to have to either, take funds out of the sale or do something to buy down the rate to make sure that the remaining parties stay at the same payment.
Which seems only fair, right? Like, you don't want to, no matter what the reason is for the exit, you don't want to necessarily screw over the rest of the people.
Rest of your friends.
So that would all be in the TIC agreement, which is, you know, basically a legal document that everybody's agreeing to.
Yeah, and then the other easiest part is, hey, why not you first write a refusal to the existing partners, right? And already predetermine how you're going to do that sale to the existing, the remaining people. They should get first shot, and there should be a mechanism for how that would be calculated and done. And if they choose not to do that, then you would have the second process, plan B.
Mm-hmm. Which would be what you just said about the rate buy down potentially, or basically the exiter making sure that one way or another the payment is not going to change for the.
If my payment is $1,200 a month, as long as my payment remains at $1,200 a month, no matter what happens, you're doing way you're moving pieces around the table, then that person gets to move their share.
And does this trigger a refi if somebody wants to exit? Question for both of you. Always, like, does it have to?
Well, it's going to, most people are going to be on a loan. The fractional lending scenario, because there's not an individual space for the lender to foreclose on. I think fractional lending would probably only work here if you were doing like 50% down. Okay. But we should ask our fractional partners for an official opinion on that idea.
Yeah. But for the most part, Sean, hey, what's up?
Sorry for the technical difficulties.
No worries. So we were gonna just talking about this group buy that we're seeing a lot right now, and you and we're all dealing with this collectively together with mutual clients, right? And it actually didn't even seem like it might seem like daunting, the pre-approval process for a group of people, and you also kind of need to have this comfort of sharing your financial situation with each other and transparency and open communication. But the pre-approval process and everything didn't seem any more like arduous from that standpoint with you, Sean, right?
Yeah, not at all. So for what we're doing, it is just truly tenants in common as how they're holding title. So if it's a multi-unit property, so we have 2-unit property, 2 families using 1 loan, it's super simple. There's nothing to it. It's just making sure, you know, are you guys doing 50-50 on the down payment? Like, what's the ownership interest going to be? Covering those questions. But with the one we're working on now, it's literally no different than qualifying any other type of purchase. And just 4 people instead of 2.
Although you do get, will the lender go off of the lowest common denominator? So will they work off of the lowest credit score rather than the highest?
Yeah, they'll work from the lowest middle score. And so that's where you're going to partner with someone, you know, you guys are friends, but to Hayley's point, you're kind of getting into a little bit more than you normally would with the friendship at this point. Yeah, if one person's credit's a little worse than the other, then maybe the rate would be higher if we had to do that. How do we compensate for that? Or can we qualify without that person? So if you had 2 couples and one person's score is causing the rates to be higher, can we qualify without that person? Just have all 4 people on title. So there's just different ways to slice it.
So you could do that where one couple qualifies, but both couples are on title.
Yeah. So then title would read John and Jane Smith and whoever else as tenants in common, and then they would specify the ownership interest at that point. So it's the same thing we do. Like one of my cousins is buying a house, and one of the scores is lower than the others, and his wife stays home with the kids, so she doesn't need to be on the loan. So let's just not have her on there. They go on title together, still have ownership interest together.
So the TIC agreement, Eddie, do you feel like is that something that should be drawn up with the attorney before, like during the shopping process, or when you get into escrow, or like what would you recommend?
Yeah, I think I would start with the beforehand, because ultimately the exit agreement is going to be, it's not going to be dictated by the property. It's going to be dictated by a mutually agreeable process for, step one, which is, the remaining people to have the right of first refusal for that share. And then part B, which is, selling it to a third party entity. So, that you just have to talk through the different processes, and I think that's where that's the most important part of the agreement. The rest of the stuff that would be specific to the property, that's an easy, thing to kind of put in place once you've got the actual property.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, cool. So the other thing to move on from that scenario, so it is doable if you have good friends and you're all willing to figure out, do a round robin on who gets what week and who gets what weekend, and have a system. I've heard of systems where people, they have a kitty and they pay for their different weekends that they all share amongst themselves based on their share. So, there's multiple different ways that you can kind of do the share scenario, and then you can kind of have like an Airbnb style calendar where everybody's kind of putting in their dates and all of that kind of stuff. So there's loads of different ways to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get into it, we have a client who's purchasing a 3-bed, 2-bath single family in Calistoga at the moment, and it's a newer style. It was built maybe 20 years ago, and near town, and it's like $850,000. So that's there are some interesting. So if you've 3 different couples looking to share that's what's 275K a couple.
Oh yeah, we're looking at stuff up in Russian River for 650.
650.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So definitely a very, very interesting way to go.
Mm-hmm.
But then switching over to our veterans and our VAs, we wanted to talk to you today, Sean, about kind of those who have served, and the it's not an easy thing to serve. So thankfully there are benefits and upside to it, and the VA and VA financing is really quite an amazing benefit. Can you talk us through kind of how that works and who qualifies? Like what are the qualifications to be considered a vet?
Yeah, no, it's so basically the VA loan is good for veterans and active duty. So you don't have to retire from the military to be able to use it. If you have been active duty for at least a year, that is one of the eligibility requirements. Or if you're in the reserves, then you qualify for it.
So if you're in the reserves,
sorry, I'm having technical difficulties again.
I turned your video off because it was a little hard to hear you. Sorry.
Oh,
didn't mean to shut you down.
So if you're in the reserves, you have to have been in the reserves for 6 years to be eligible to use your benefit.
Okay.
So I thought about joining the reserves just because the loan is so great. That's kind of how I started looking into what the eligibility requirements were. And it's the best loan. It is hands down the best loan available, because you can do 0 down. Just because you can do 0 down doesn't mean you have to, but you have that option.
Yeah.
The interest rate's lower than conventional loans.
Is amazing.
That's it. Yeah. And the way they qualify is a little bit more common sense than what conventional loans do. So conventional loans follow a debt to income ratio requirement. So if you make $5,000 a month and the debt to income ratio allows for 50%, you can have $2,500 be debt, which that's not a lot of money, right? That's gross income. That means you don't have a lot to live on after you buy your home. if you make $50,000 a month, you can have $25,000 in debt. But you have $25,000 of residual income. So like the ratio thing has never quite made sense to me. The VA looks at like true cost. So they do a residual income calculator. So you don't have that same debt to income ratio requirement. You can exceed it, which makes it easier to qualify for. The big concerns I'd say in the Bay Area, and the reason I'm so passionate about it, is what I experience is a lot of times the realtors don't understand how it works. So there's misconceptions from past experiences. So the way the loan works today is very different than it used to be. And what I think has happened is our prices in the Bay Area have gone up so much, and we got away from using VA loans, and then we assume what was true previously is true today. And a lot of things have changed. So way back when the seller had to pay for the inspections, no longer the case. The seller had to pay all the closing costs, no longer the case. All these things have changed, but these are the things that I hear from listing agents when I call is, well, the seller's not, my client's not willing to pay any of these fees. I'm like, perfect. We don't need them to. The appraisals, you know, I did this little joke thing last week or the week before about appraisals not appraising for purchase transactions. It doesn't really happen that often anymore because the internet's the great equalizer. We all can go online and, well, not you have from MLS, but we can get a pretty solid idea of what property sold for in a specific area or neighborhood. So the appraisal isn't some magical thing anymore. We all know if there's a comparable sales or there's not. And so VA appraisals are no different than conventional appraisals in that the appraiser is trying to make sure that there's comparables to support the value or the purchase price. So there's just all these changes. I want to make sure everyone's aware of in the Bay Area. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and if you think of like
it's getting hard to hear you there, Sean. You're breaking up.
So I was going to say is 9/11 was 19 years ago. Over the last 19 years, went to they signed. Is that better?
You disappeared altogether that time. So try one more. There you go. Okay. Hi.
Maybe.
I
really want to hear that part. What a cliffhanger.
But there, the other thing is, I think there are a lot of lenders who who don't understand the process and don't are not able to do them either. So you do have to work with a lender who knows how to operate in this domain. Are you back?
How about now?
There you go.
And is this any better?
Way better.
Way better.
I hope so. Is this better? So where did I cut out?
9/11.
Okay, perfect. So I was listening to a podcast the other day, and he made a really good point. So if you think of 9/11, which we just had last week, and it was 19 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Anyone who has signed up for the military has signed up to go to war over the last 19 years. They're not just going, hey, the military is going to give me some money for college, and this seems like a good idea. There's actively for 20 years been a war going on, and they're signing up to go. It's very different than a non-wartime situation. And I just think that's a very interesting difference, right? Like you're signing up to put yourself in harm's way. So I just think that we want to do what we can to help veterans, and as much as we can. And there's so many misconceptions about it in the Bay Area specifically. You can finance up to $1.5 million with no money down. So if I want to be a realtor and I just want to be selfish and go, man, how do I sell more homes at higher dollars that are easier to qualify? You go help veterans. They get no money down, $1.5 million purchase price, easier qualifications for income. it's a simple loan. So it's, of course, we want to go about it saying, let's go help those who have served. But for those who are all about the money, you could look at it that way too.
There. And then what about rates? Do they get good rates, or do they make up for what they're getting in down payment by not getting as good a rate? How does that work?
That's a good question. So right now, there's no mortgage insurance, period. The rates on a higher loan balance, like the $1.5 million, you'd be probably around 2.5% on a 30-year fixed. Where if you're under 510,000, it's probably closer to like 2.25%. And everything's different. And this is not a guarantee to lend and all of that, because I'm not quoting an APR, but that's roughly where the interest rates are. There is a VA funding fee. So basically the VA charges a fee to enable you to utilize the program. Did I go away again?
No, you're good. So you're
no?
bouncing.
Okay, cool.
You're in that.
So if
you're underwater, but so what's that fee? Is that like 1% of the loan, or
It varies. And it varies depending on how much you're putting down.
Another cliffhanger. Right. I have one other question that I want to get on it too. So we'll figure out.
Basically, I think the highest is 2.4%. If you have disability, just 10%. Most of the ones I've seen have.
And I think we may have to we can ask you these questions and you can put it in the chat, maybe, Sean, because the second or kind of final question I had on it was, can I buy a rental property? Does it have to be owner occupied, or if it does have to be owner occupied, can I buy like a 2 or 3 unit building where I can live in one and rent out the others?
Or does it have to be your primary residence?
Does it have to be your primary residence?
So I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see when we can record the second part of this webinar.
Yeah.
Part one.
Technical difficulties.
That's all. Oh, he's back.
Here he is. Can you hear us, Sean?
We got you now. I tried logging out and back in to see if it was any better.
That's actually a lot better. So we were kind of wrapping up with the two kind of questions. So the fee that is involved is the fee depends on a couple of different factors, whether or not the veteran's disabled, if the veteran's putting any money down, that kind of stuff. But it sounds like the fees 1 or 2%.
Yeah. So basically, I think the highest it is 2.4%. And then depending on how much down payment you have, it can adjust downward from there.
And can you finance it?
Yeah, yep, that's exactly what they do. They just roll it into the loan amount. So if you buy a home for $1 million, you're going to have your loan amount will be more than your purchase price because you can finance the VA funding fee. You don't have to finance it, but everyone does.
Perfect.
And again, most people, if you have 10% disability from the VA, that fee is waived. So you don't have to be, I don't want to say somebody's disabled, but you just have to receive 10% disability from the VA and they waive that fee.
Okay.
So then in regards to the type of property that I can purchase, can I purchase an investment property or does it have to be my primary residence?
It has to be a primary residence. But the cool thing about it is if you buy a home, live in it, move out, but retain the property, you don't have to refinance out. If you can leave your VA benefit on that property and then you can still refinance it using your VA benefit. And it's like a hybrid. It's not considered an investment property like it would be trading a conventional loan. It's you're almost getting the exact same rate you would have if it was a primary residence.
Wow. So can I purchase a 2 or 3 unit building and live in one unit and have the others rented out?
Absolutely. And then
Beautiful.
that works perfectly. Yeah.
And then the way you say using your benefit, so that sounds, and it has to be principal. So that means you can only have one VA loan at a time on a property. So if you wanted to use say you rented a property out that you use the VA benefit on, and you wanted to buy another house using your VA benefit, you would maybe refi the first one onto a regular loan, and then just use your VA benefit on something else?
Yeah, you can do that. And it comes down to the price. So it depends on how much, there's a loan limit to how much you're eligible for. If you haven't utilized the full benefit, you can use it on 2 properties. So harder in California, but in other states, if you're buying a place for 200 here and another place for 200, you can use your VA benefit more than once simultaneously, if that makes sense.
Cool.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So it's really, the benefit is a total amount of up to 1.5 million of lending, and how many properties that could be, it depends on just where you are in the country.
Well, and that's just where it gets a little complicated. So the 1.5 million is more of a high cost area thing. So it's an entitlement. So basically what you do, the veteran or the lender can pull what's called a certificate of eligibility. That certificate of eligibility is going to tell us if you're exempt from the VA funding fee and what your entitlement dollar amount is.
Okay.
So I don't want someone to sit here that we said $1.5 million and they go, cool, I'm going to buy 2 $750,000 homes, because that may not work. It all comes down to that certificate of eligibility.
And how long does it take from application, how long does it take to receive your certificate?
We get it immediately. So with us, we get, if somebody applies today, I'll receive their cert from the VA by tomorrow. So we get it automatically. Wow. Not everyone does that, but the veteran can just call the VA and get a copy of it as well.
Okay, perfect. Wow. Yeah, it's what an amazing benefit. And if anybody, if you're a veteran and you're not using it, you're in a lot of ways missing out on something that's a great, tremendous kind of asset and benefit to get your net worth and all of that kind of up and started, especially for people being in the service with the zero down. That down payment gap can be the problem to getting into the marketplace, because they've been away serving, or they haven't been making money to sock away that down payment to make a purchase. So it's especially if you're a veteran and you're renting, now is the time to use your benefit. So cool. That's amazing.
And that's why I'm trying to bring so much education to it.
I think we lost you again, Sean.
Yeah, I think.
Well, the problem, they can't use it. You'll never get your offer accepted. Educate as many people as possible on how it.
I think what he was saying there was he's trying to shed some light on the situation, and there's a fear that you won't get your offer accepted, and there should be more understanding on the listing agent's part to understand the process, and super well qualified. Yeah.
So
well, thank you so much for sharing all that, and sorry it was a little shaky, but really appreciated.
That's on. And then Sean, he's I love in his name tag there. That's how you can find him. You can always email him at sean.herrero@rate.com. And then Hayley, where are we found when we're in the dark and lost and don't know where we are?
elevationrealestate.com or on Facebook, and you can find our Instagram elevation SF, and you can find Sean on Instagram at Adventure Lender. He's had some really great posts lately, regarding this VA thing, and then also the appraisal situation that we were talking about. So it's really amazing to follow him and just like see these very clear explanations of things that are commonly misunderstood. So keep doing that, Sean. I love it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
This has been great. So it's until I will see you later, but we'll see everybody else next Thursday.
Perfect.
All
Yay.
right.
Thanks, you
Cheers.
guys. Sorry for the difficulty.
No
No worries. No worries, Sean. Cheers.